Welcome back. All right, I haven't done one of these in a while, have I? So, I want to talk about the Netflix thing that's going. I swear I made a video on this not long ago. I cannot find it on the channel. And by not long ago, I mean like maybe 3 years ago. Because I talked about Netflix at one point, and I know I mentioned that they had a business model that didn't seem to work. And there's articles that were written on it. I want to say again 3 years ago on how their business model didn't work. Basically, they were spending a lot of money on TV shows. They were spending a lot of money to make movies that seemed like it had to be above the amount of money they were bringing in from subscribers. That they were spending all this money to try to get people to buy their service and keep their service, and that it just didn't logically make sense. Now their stock was ridiculously high. Their stock was trading at $391.50 US on April 4th. I believe this is Dow Jones money, right? So right now it's trading at $208.56. And again, for stock, I think that's reasonable. Again, the drop being because their subscriber numbers have dropped. Now, people want to speculate on why. I'm just going to say it's kind of everything. And this is something that, honestly, if somebody told me I just bought stock in Netflix and, it was $390, I would have said to them, their business model isn't necessarily great. So, how they got people to sign up for Netflix in the first place was price. It was so cheap. Wasn't it like $5.99? I think, and I'm talking from a Canadian perspective. I think when I first signed up, it was $5.99, and you got everything. And it was great. It was fantastic, and they encouraged sharing your password and just go ahead and share it around. And I got into it after the DVD thing. I don't think they ever shipped the DVDs in Canada. I know they did in the States. I don't think they ever did in Canada. So, which really wasn't a big deal because DVDs, of course, are basically a dinosaur thing. I have hundreds of DVDs, which you'll see on the new set for the Entertainment Guy. But yeah, that's just how I work. I do prefer the DVDs. I prefer the physical copy, and I've talked about that in videos before too. But the price going up is one thing, but the price increases every year. I get it. I get it. Netflix has to increase the price, and I think, and again, they're opaque with their numbers. They're really opaque with a lot of their numbers. I don't think they're making the amount of money that people thought they were making. So I think what we're finding out with them losing 200,000 subscribers is that this is probably a better number if you're holding stock. However, if you bought at this number and 3 weeks later it's this number, well, it's not great. But the stock market in general, I think, is overinflated. I think there's so much speculation in stocks now. It's like the whole crypto thing. Everything, like every ad is for crypto. I almost guarantee that on this video there'll be probably a crypto ad. And I think what I've learned is people who sell crypto, people who broker crypto, make a lot of money. That's what I've learned because they're advertising everywhere. It's just like the gambling sites; they're everywhere because they're making a ton of money, so they can afford to spend that money on advertising. So price is a big one. Price has gone up. And the fact that every year it goes up again is one thing. And it might be understandable, but then you have to factor in the others. There are controversies. There are many controversies. I'm not going to get into all the controversies here. A lot of the time it's they don't market very well. They don't anticipate how people are going to receive things that they do. And they kind of trip over their own feet a lot of the time in their messaging, which can be an issue with a corporation. Absolutely, they're not the first corporation to do something that you say, wow, that was really poorly planned out, poorly thought out, but here we are. The controversy issue definitely drove things, I would say, a year ago, right? But what's going on now is more than that. There's definitely more to it than that. Because the next one on this, and I'm going to get into this one a little bit more than the controversy part because I think this is a huge part, is selection. So at the time when all of this is starting up, of course, I want to use a marker, but I want it to be a different color. So the green doesn't show up very well. I'll pick you up when the video's done. No, I'll pick it up now. So yeah, the orange don't show up very well either. I'll go with purple, even though it's dying on me. So selection. Selection's the big one for me. Yeah, that one's dying. That's not going to make it. That one's going to die mid-video. I think this one's fine. So selection's a big one. So in the beginning, you had your shows. And you know what? I'm also going to put in here another one that's important because I think people have pointed this out, and that's quality. So when Netflix brought out a show, you knew it was going to be very good, right? You knew it was going to be a good show, and you're going to binge watch it. I think like the first couple of seasons of House of Cards before the rest of House of Cards. When I was so psyched to sit, I'd be like, all right, House of Cards, here I am, I'm here. Okay, let's do this. You know, and I have no plans tonight. I'm watching House of Cards. And then the the quality drops off. It's kind of the Full House effect, I think. Like they did the Fuller House thing, and then it just all kind of there's a cliff, and just the quality kind of. It wasn't about producing the best shows anymore. At least it didn't seem to be. It was producing shows, and so they might dump 20 or 30. And then the other problem is that their menu, it pushes certain shows and certain movies. So it'll recommend, and I know when I go into my wife's account or I'm in my account, there's a total difference in what it's recommending. But it buries movies too. There have been times where I'm thinking, I haven't watched a certain movie in a long time, and I can't find it on Netflix. But if I do a search through my TV, it'll say, oh, that's available on Netflix. And then I watch it through Netflix. And I'm baffled that they don't seem to have a menu that works very well, even though I have to say it's great that every time that you go from one movie to the next, it loads up video, because that's what we needed. I really don't need that. I hate that. There are times where I'm scrolling through Netflix and I'm trying to scroll through so fast that it won't start loading up the video and the audio, because I don't want to watch part of a trailer of a show I have no interest in. But quality is a big one. And then the other problem is their selection is dropped because you now have Disney Plus, right? You have, if you're in the States, you have Hulu, you have, and I'll just put etc. because I can go for a while, right? So here in Canada, we have Crave. We have HBO as well. And of course, you're going to have a lot of movie and TV shows on there. And when Netflix came in, it's not like all of the other big players in streaming just said, well, I guess it's all theirs now. And so it's interesting to me. When Netflix started out, a big part of the messaging too was, hey, you're paying how much for your cable bill every month? Just get Netflix. For $5.99, you can get endless hours of watchable TV and not have to pay the cable companies that huge, bloated cable bill. Well, here we are years later, and those cable companies have figured out how to get your money. People are cutting the cord with cable. Absolutely, yes. But streaming services have exploded. And when I look at all of the prices of the cable services, it's not really that much of a saving anymore. So if I want to watch shows and movies, I don't have one place to watch them, which Netflix could have legitimately called themselves at one point not that long ago. If you want to watch these shows and these movies, we're the only show in town. And so that exclusivity is gone, right? Where Marvel said, all right, well, we're going to put all our stuff on Disney, so we're just going to yank it off Netflix and put it on Disney. We're going to cancel all that because we're going to put it on Disney. And so that was a big one too, and that's a hit, right? And so hit after hit after hit happens with Netflix. And the selection isn't what it was. I don't even think the menu now is as good as it was before. And while that may seem like a minor thing, if you get Netflix, or if you have Netflix and you're like, I can't find anything to watch in here, and you cancel it, part of it may be because the menu didn't show you anything you actually wanted to watch. There are times where I load up my recommendations. I'm like, why would I, like, it'll recommend some stupid frat comedy show that I hated. I'm like, why would I don't want to watch that. I didn't want to watch it when it came out. So that's definitely part of it. But price point is huge, because if I was paying $5.99 and now it's $14.99, well, I expect, if the price is going to triple, I expect as a consumer, my selection will be better. My selection isn't better. Is the quality of the show better? The answer is no. There are some bad shows. I try to pick up new shows here and there, and it's usually a disaster. The most recent one I tried, nope, I tried How I Met Your Father. I made it 5 minutes into that before I said, no, I can't do this. It's usually the laugh track. The laugh track's bad, and I think shows like Parks and Rec and The Office have reminded me when I rewatch them, you don't need a laugh track to tell you when something is funny. And so when a show has a laugh track, my brain kind of says, this show doesn't think it's very funny because you're using a laugh track. And they know if the laugh track's gone, it's not going to be funny. They're just cruel jokes. Take the laugh track out of Big Bang Theory, take the laugh track out of Friends. They're just dicks. It's amazing. Although if you change the name of Friends to that, I think there'd be some people tuning in going, wow, I'm disappointed. That's not what I thought I was going to get. So, anyways, the selection I think is a big part of it. And then there's cancellations. I'm not talking about subscribers canceling. I am talking about I sit down and I watch Archive 81 not that long ago. I'm like, this is a quality show. And it's top 10. It was number one on the Canadian Netflix, anyways, for about a week. I thought, all right. And all the streaming numbers seemed good. But they weren't happy with how quickly we binge watched the show, so they canceled it. That's the rumor. So it's not, so you sit down and you watch shows. Not every show is binge worthy in a weekend. And with Archive 81, there were times where I had to digest what had happened in an episode before I moved on to the next one. So because I'm taking the time in between episodes, Netflix is going, well, he's not that interested because he didn't binge watch it all in one sitting. When you can't. It's just too much crap going on. Right now, I'm watching season 2 of Russian Doll. Absolutely fantastic, amazing show, ridiculously good. I didn't know how you do a season 2 of that show and make it work. It works. So I think we're 5 episodes in. Absolutely bonkers. And a completely different premise to the first season, and yet somehow it works. So the fact that Archive 81 gets canceled, here's where that influences my watching. I watched the first 2 episodes of that show with my wife. I was like, you're going to enjoy this show, and it looks like they set up a really nice season 2 with the cliffhanger at the end of season 1. Well, I stopped. Because I'm like, okay, well, now she's going to get stuck on that cliffhanger. She's going to be mad at that cliffhanger. So I stopped. And when you see the shows that they renew, the quality tends to drop, which is not that unusual. Shows will lose that quality as time goes on. It's just the way it works. All of the quirky things that make characters have this natural dislike for one another, they smooth all that out. They all become buddy-buddy. And of course, the show just becomes it's kind of there and you're watching it because you don't know what else to do. It's the only reason I can find for why The Walking Dead lasted as long as it did. But Netflix cancels them right away. Netflix, you get one season and then it's canceled. And this is not what Netflix was supposed to be. Netflix, it wasn't supposed to be the same as network TV. There's nothing more frustrating than getting into a new show on network TV and going, this is pretty good. And it's canceled after week 2. There's this ADHD thing that goes on now with TV shows and renewals and cancellations. And it drives me crazy. Sometimes shows need time. And there were shows in the 70s, there were shows in the 80s that bombed out of the gate. And then they turned it around. Their ratings went through the roof. And next thing you know, they're a fan favorite. But now with advertisers and of course with their demographic stuff and everything else and all these formulas they use, they're like, nope, that show's gone. And it's a show that might have gotten an audience, right? The best example of that is Freaks and Geeks. If Freaks and Geeks had lasted longer than one season, it would have been a beloved show and it probably would have gone for 5 or 6. And you look at the cast from that show, ridiculously talented cast, and it got pitched. Well, ratings weren't high. Great show. And it's frustrating, right? Netflix was supposed to be different, and it's not, and so it's hard to get into them. So I end up watching like the competition shows, the reality shows, and shows like Parks and Rec. I went through the entire series over the last month because I already know when it got canceled, but at least I got 7 seasons out of it, and it's a lot of time to watch that. But because I binge watched it, that tells Netflix, hey, Parks and Rec, maybe you'll watch it again. Yeah, maybe I will. However, I also have Parks and Rec on DVD. I have the whole series. So I could just cancel. And so I mean I'm not going to. I have kids. The kids watch Netflix and it's something. I mean my wife watches it. We all watch it. But then you get into the whole fact that they're talking about cracking down on password sharing, which they've encouraged. They've absolutely encouraged. As my mother, I pay for her Netflix account with my card. Could Netflix come along and go, there's 2 Netflix accounts on this card? Like, I don't think I'm in any danger because it's 2 different accounts, but there's 2 different houses too, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're actually going to crack down on people that are sharing passwords. I think that the first time that they actually crack down on that, they're just going to lose more subscribers. If they want to get the market share back, then they have to make sure the shows are quality. They don't cancel them right away. Have some kind of a, I don't know, quality control to your shows. and just have that. And instead of worrying about people binge watching everything right away, worry about people staying on your service and using it. Just measure it by, you have X amount of users. How many hours a week are they on Netflix? Is it dropping? Which demographic is it dropping with? And I'm sure they do all this. But the answer is they keep hiking the price. And coming back to my initial point is, I don't think that it's a company that's had a really good game plan out of the gate for how to actually make a lot of money doing this. And again, this is something that people who have worked for networks or just entertainment people in general have said, how does this work with the business model? Certain shows cost a lot of money. And so if those shows don't work out, well, somebody's got to pay for it. And that'd be the subscribers via a pay hike. The price hike would be fine if they said, all right, we're going to hike the price, but you're going to get exclusive content and make it good exclusive content. But in general, that hasn't been the case lately. And again, while I love Russian Doll and I love some of the stuff I watch on Netflix, there are also plenty of times that I load it up and I'm like, and then I go into Amazon Prime Video instead, where again, I might just find a dead end, but you've got Amazon Prime, you've got Disney Plus, you've got, as I said, Crave TV here in Canada, which I get through my cable. There's a lot of different options. And so Netflix, it's easier to get rid of Netflix than it was when they were the only show in town, and they were cheap. They're no longer cheap. They're no longer the only show in town. And I'd even argue that comparing the exclusives, I would say that Netflix does not have the exclusives along the same lines as some of the others. And part of it is they don't have their own studio. Real, like, I understand they make their own shows. They have their own shows that they create and all that. But in terms of being a big name studio, well, they're not Paramount. They're not Warner Brothers. So when those big giants say, well, we can just have our own streaming service like Disney did, we'll just take all that off there and put it over here and have our own streaming service, absolutely hurts Netflix. And when those content creators, when Hulu, Disney, all the others come through and say, well, we're going to have this exclusive content, Netflix doesn't come along and say, we're sorry, we've lost all this content, we're going to drop the price this month. So again, perception will always influence the reality of the situation. And I think the stock, it's going to bounce back. It will, because that's what stocks do. But I think $391 was probably really, really high. And again, well, I think there's a lot of bubbles going on right now. I know the housing bubble in North America is ridiculous, absolutely insane. Some of the prices that houses are going for right now. I also think that there's a stock market crash in our future at some point, because there's a lot of stuff that's just ridiculously high. But I just say that as somebody who used to love to watch the stock ticker when I was a teenager. Growing up, I loved to watch the stock market. I loved to watch all that. And I always thought, I wouldn't mind being a stockbroker someday. Never got into it. Never happened. And here I am. So 365 days a year, I make YouTube videos. Whereas I probably would have been a stockbroker at least the 5 weekdays. I guess you can still do it technically after hours on weekends, I guess. But anyways, there you go. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on Netflix. And again, if you've canceled, let me know what your thoughts are on that too. Because again, I think it's a combination of everything. If I was living by myself, I don't know that I'd have a Netflix subscription. I don't think I would have one at the upper tier, definitely. I mean, we have to have a higher tier because the boys want to watch Netflix and I want to watch Netflix. It shouldn't be one of us or the other. And again, with all the devices that can play Netflix, who knows how many of us are watching it at the same time. Netflix does. But yeah, it is an interesting topic because it feels like nothing is permanent. Certainly, I'm old enough to remember when there were certain things in the 80s or the 90s. I remember when Blockbuster came up, everybody loved Blockbuster, and now they're all gone. So certainly nothing is permanent. Netflix at some point may not be the king of the streaming services, and they may end up having to look at some of these things and start to do better. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.